Hey Channel Insiders, welcome back to Channel Insider Partner POV, your source for untapped opportunities and unfiltered opinions in the IT channel, all to help you make better business decisions. I'm your host, Katie Bavoso. My guest today is Kyle Wentworth, founder and CEO of Wentworth Consulting Group. Kyle took his 4+ decades in IT and security, nearly 3 of which he spent operating his own MSP, and became a provider of fractional technology expertise. Kyle and his team not only fill the position of CTO, CIO, or CISO for clients, but they also act as translators between business leadership and IT or MSP teams, which helps improve clients' operational efficiency, security, and even saves some companies hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Welcome, Kyle.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you today because what you do, I think, is so important for not only the channel, but the tech space in general. You've been described to me as a tech translator. So why don't we jump into it first by talking about you, your background. First of all, I know that you're a U.S. Army vet, and I just want to thank you for your service so much for what you've done for this country. Thank you. I also know that you have spent 40+ years in IT and security, and prior to Wentworth Consulting, you ran an MSP for nearly 30 years. So when it comes to experience, I think I'm talking to the right guy. So with that said, tell me what your endeavor is now. Wentworth Consulting Group started in 2019. Talk to me about your core mission as a company, as a consultant.
So during my tenure in the MSP space, one of the things that I always ran into, like literally always, we'd come into clients' offices and we were constantly having to explain technology to the person who was responsible for making the decisions on the proposals or the choices that we were bringing to them for their business. They didn't understand the technology dialogue. It was like a completely foreign language to them. So the struggle with that for the technologist is it's like a brain surgeon trying to tell you all the intricacies of the brain in order for you to understand what you're going to have to approve and pay for after the doctor's done with your brain surgery. We don't understand brain surgery unless we're a brain surgeon. Business owners most commonly don't understand technology. They hear all the terminologies, they hear all the discussions that come up in threads online, in their emails, they read about it, but it doesn't just click. They need a translator. That translator's position in business is the CTO. The purpose of the CTO is to take on 100% of the dialogue related to technology and communicate with all the technology vendors and participants in ensuring that technology is deployed and administered correctly in a business. It's not the position of the CEO of the business. The CEO's position is to drive their business. I'm heavy into Mike Michalowicz's pumpkin plan perspective. So staying focused on growing your biggest pumpkin is important in business. When business executives would have to dialogue with us, it was a distraction to them, and distraction comes at a cost. So Wentworth Consulting Group was created out of that lack of communication. Businesses of all sizes, regardless of the size, need a CTO on staff. Whether they be a fractional CTO as a contractor or whether they be permanent full-time, they need someone who can translate the technology discussion with business owners on their behalf as part of their company, not as an entity inside of the managed service provider who's providing a for-profit solution to the client. They need somebody who's on their side. But the managed service provider also needs somebody that they can communicate with to effectively provide a technology solution to that client. And without this interpreter in the middle, both sides lose. So Wentworth Consulting Group provides fractional CTO and operational maturity consulting to business executives today to help them take these hats off that they're not responsible for handling and to help mature the quality of their business.
For the audience members that may be new to this space, to the channel, or if you're a customer essentially looking to learn more, I do want to make sure that I define fractional for you. Essentially, in short terms, part-time but highly skilled. I am curious to know, when it comes to that ability to be able to take you on as a consultant contractually, how has that opened the door for so many of your clients to be able to say, this is a service that, one, I didn't know existed, and two, I really need?
They understand it pretty quickly when you bring into the dialogue that you hire a CPA to do your taxes. You don't bring a CPA on staff to do your taxes. Once they get the perspective that it frees up all this time, it's only a part-time cost. And realistically, for the majority of businesses, and I'm talking like in the very high percentages, you don't need a full-time CTO person on staff. Once your technology infrastructure is in place and the mentalities of good technology are in place, and you have qualified managed service providers providing the solutions, you don't need somebody full-time on staff to do CTO related work.
Where do you see the most operational immaturity or challenges at companies when they come to you? Is it something you can see right away with your expertise and knowledge, or is it something you really have to dig into to find?
We have a select group of questions we ask business executives to determine whether or not they've made their mindset is making less wise decisions. We all have our desires and goals with our business, but a lot of times we think that we can do certain things that we really shouldn't. We can buy certain things as write-offs that we really can't afford, or we're processing things in our business improperly because of a lack of education and understanding. It's amazing how many little things for long periods of time businesses have done repeatedly because one person has been in a position doing that same thing over and over and over and over with no real guidance on how it should be done. So if you don't have auditors coming in to audit on certain areas of your business to ensure your staff are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing and they're doing them the proper way, you could be losing tons of money, or you could be ending up in financial devastation situations because you were improperly handling something that was supposed to be handled in a different way. And that's very common. Inexperienced internal IT people are devastating to large companies, and business executives just don't understand that it's not necessarily their fault. It's a foundational education issue. If you don't have the experience and knowledge, just because I can get a computer to work and somebody can open up their email and get to their email doesn't mean that the rest of the technology environment is being handled in an intellectually mature way related to technology. And it's important that somebody external provides wisdom and knowledge and guidance. Most commonly, it's a seasoned MSP to the internal IT staff. And co-managed IT is a very common thing these days. Managed service providers are good at performing that function. Where you have boots on the ground who are internal and most of your MSPs are remote, it's not uncommon for you to have a co-managed technology department. The struggle is when you don't allow the managed service provider to be the wisdom in your organization, and you rely on your internal IT department to make uneducated decisions. So foundation in technology is extremely important. The age of wisdom is retiring. And so it's very important that the education of younger individuals in the technology space gets to a point where they understand that you don't build a 20-story skyscraper without digging deep into the ground first. It requires foundational support to support the structure as it builds up. Companies are the same way. You need to have foundational knowledge in your technology department. It is the part of your business that runs your business. If you don't believe it, just take the technology out. You'll be mowing grass for a living. It's the one thing in business that executives need to change their mindset, that it is a profit center for your company and not an expense structure. And if you don't put money into that part of your business, it will take your money away. And CrowdStrike's a great example. If you don't have solutions in place where your internal teams are proving and auditing and measuring solutions as they're changed in your organization, you allow it externally automated things like updates and things to happen that shut down your company for days. And good seasoned managed service providers don't allow external automatic updates to happen. They vet everything before it gets applied into the network. It's the shoot from the hip technology companies that are just trying to get the jobs done that allow automation of everything in the business. And that can be a painful struggle for companies to have, as well as the stress it puts on the MSP when situations like that happen. I can only imagine the amount of stress all of the managed service providers who have CrowdStrike as a product incorporated into their client space. The client sees the MSP as the provider of all solutions, as well as the creator of all solutions in most cases. And the MSP takes the brunt of the abuse when a problem like that and downtime and issues occur. It's a very important position to be in as the managed service provider for your client. And the client needs to understand that the wisdom of the managed service provider is critical in their business. So the selection of experienced, seasoned, aged technologists in a company is an important decision for the business executive in order to be able to remove the technology decision hat from their head and put it on someone else. One of the things I see frequently is free tools. We see free tools in clients' networks where end users are allowed to download free resources that they've used at home to do specific things, not realizing that the intellectual property of your business is being put into a cloud storage solution in order to produce a graphic or a widget or a gizmo, some marketing thing or whatnot. And you're not realizing that you just lost the intellectual control, the control of the property that you just put into that cloud storage space on that free account. And this kind of thing happens all the time. Business owners are losing intellectual property, not only when employees leave their business because they didn't document how tasks were performed by that employee before the employee left, but they're losing intellectual property as staff uses cloud-based services to store and implement solutions that run their business. There isn't somebody with wisdom who understands when to say no.
Thinking about that though, Kyle, how do we overcome that?
Internal policy and governance. The most important documentation in a company's business is their business process model. Essentially, it's the documentation of how all of the processes for their business are required to function. It comes from the inventor's brain. Who is the inventor? The business owner who created that entity. They had an idea when they first created that entity of how they wanted the business to run and perform. So taking that knowledge and documenting their intent for that knowledge, and then going to their staff and saying, how can we implement this perspective or this idea? And then having the staff develop plans and processes and steps and procedures to perform those functions, and then document those steps and procedures, and then prove them, and then adjust and edit and prove them again, and adjust and edit and prove them again until you get a good, well-baked process.
I want to come back to Wentworth Consulting and making sure that I'm talking about the successes that you're having with your clients. Could you walk me through a success story in which you were contacted, you came in, you diagnosed the issue, and you were able to start setting up those steps towards operational maturity?
We have a lot of those kinds of success stories. One of them that I enjoy the most is a client years ago that was processing use tax incorrectly. If you don't know what use tax is, not to get in extreme detail, if I pay sales tax on something, I have to deduct it from the sales tax that I eventually pay the state when I charge the client sales tax when they buy my product. And if you're processing that incorrectly, you probably have a lot of loss or are going to have a lot of loss. And if you do have a lot of loss because you process sales tax incorrectly, sales tax and use tax incorrectly, you might be owed money back from the state. And that was the case with our client. And there was no statute of limitations on how far you could go back. And it was hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in improperly processed use tax from a person who had been doing the finances, that portion of the finances, for 20 plus years for the business. This goes back into the auditing process. If you have a process in your business and you don't have an external auditor come in and prove that process could be extremely inefficient and costing you money. Being done incorrectly in a positive way might give you a big check at the end, which it did for this client. And now there's a statute of limitations in the state because we went back almost 20 years.
Did you force that change in the statute of limitations?
I would suspect that event, that one event, probably made somebody in leadership think twice about how far that they could go back. On the inverse, we have a client that was doing something very incorrectly with data. They were deleting data that they should be retaining related to employees, and they have a lot of employees, like a lot of employees. Yeah. And the fines for that deletion of data are extensive. This was because of immature internal IT and extremely old hardware and extremely old systems that weren't kept up to date, but because email and websites and everything worked from a leadership perspective, no one wanted to spend the money on improving old technology. As a result, operational maturity and uneducated internal technology failed that company, and it's billions of dollars of cost because of the deletion of that data.
My last question for you today before we find out how we can reach out to you would just be, I see a lot of work that you're doing on LinkedIn with disabled veterans and really standing up for the men and women of this country who have defended it. I really want to make sure that I give you an opportunity to talk about the philanthropic and charitable work that you're doing and that Wentworth is doing. Can you talk to me a little bit about that if you'd like to?
So we have a couple of organizations that we work with that are directly impacting veterans. The primary one is the Veterans Ranch. They're an equine therapy, PTSD support nonprofit that helps prior active duty and even some current active duty military soldiers and Marines. They help them through the use of horses to cope with their PTSD issues. It's amazing the relationship that a horse can create with a person when that horse chooses that person. The horses just inherently have that capability of reaching that person. It's amazing the experience that they go through and the transition that they go through once they get engaged with equine therapy. The Veterans Ranch could really use some help and support right now, and you can go to theveteransranch.org and donate.
Thank you so much for talking to me and our audience about that. I think it's so important to remember the people behind the technology and the people behind those people. So thank you very much for all that you do to support this wonderful organization. And Kyle, if we want to reach out to you, if I'm an end user company and I need help, how do I reach out to you and get in contact to leverage your fractional technology expertise?
You can reach out to me directly through my LinkedIn. So if you look for Kyle Wentworth in LinkedIn, you'll find me right off the bat. And there's a booking link on the top of my profile that allows you to just book a meeting right there. Otherwise, you can go to wentworthconsultinggroup.com.
Thank you again, Kyle, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I wish you the best of luck through the rest of 2024.
Katie, it's been great. I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much to Kyle for joining me today, and thank you for watching or listening. You can check out all episodes of Channel Insider Partner POV on channelinsider.com or watch on our YouTube page at channelinsider_news and trends. You can also listen to the podcast of this interview and every interview wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow wherever possible so you never miss an episode. Once again, I'm Katie Bavoso, and I will see you next time.